6 months had passed since the battle at Veltar, and the galaxy had become a much quieter place. Trade routes that had been dangerous for centuries were now safe for peaceful merchants. Pirate attacks had almost completely stopped, because even the most violent criminals understood that hitting the wrong target could bring terrible consequences. Ambassador Taemin sat in his office on the space station orbiting Earth, reading reports from human colonies across the galaxy. The 3 worlds that the Velkari had tried to take were now doing better than ever. New Seoul had built 2 more universities and a major research center. Busan Station had expanded its shipyards to handle increased trade. Jeju Colony had signed profitable agreements with 6 different alien species. But more importantly, other species were asking for human protection. The Minari, a peaceful people who had never built weapons, now flew human flags on their cargo ships to keep pirates away. The Gentle Ones, plant-like beings who only wanted to grow beautiful gardens, had requested human military advisors to help defend their worlds. Captain Sora entered the office carrying her daily intelligence report. The hegemony of Zar just announced they are converting their entire raider fleet to cargo haulers, she told Taemin. They want to bid on contracts to carry human trade goods. Taemin smiled at this news. Former pirates becoming honest merchants. There is something beautiful about that change. The Ravager clans have made a similar announcement, Sora continued. They are offering to work as security guards for merchant ships traveling dangerous routes. What about the Velkari Empire? Sora checked her notes. Emperor Velthak has created a new government policy called Peaceful Development. All military expansion has stopped completely. They are focusing on improving life for their own people and building voluntary trade partnerships. And their military buildup? Completely halted. Our sources report that they have actually begun taking apart older warships and converting them into scientific research vessels. Taemin nodded, then asked the question that worried him most. Any attempts by other species to discover our real military capabilities? Several attempts, Sora admitted. The Zeph Confederacy has tried to sneak spies into our shipyards. The Krell have attempted to bribe our military officers for classified information. Even some of our allies have been asking detailed questions about our defenses. And how have we responded? Standard security procedures. We give them no information about our advanced weapons, but we have allowed limited tours of our regular fleet, so they can see that our normal ships are exactly what they appear to be. This was the key to humanity's new position in the galaxy. By keeping the true nature of their secret weapons hidden, they maintained the mystery that made those weapons so effective. Every species knew that humans had ships like the Indomitable, but nobody knew how many existed or where they might be stationed. The uncertainty was more powerful than any direct threat. An enemy you could count and locate could be planned against, prepared for, maybe even defeated. But unknown capabilities created a constant fear that prevented conflicts from starting in the first place. Captain Jinwoo and his crew had returned to their secret base hidden in the outer solar system. Officially, they were still dead people who had never existed, but their brief battle had changed the course of galactic history. The Indomitable now sat in its concealed dock, being maintained and upgraded while the crew trained for missions they hoped would never be needed. Captain, Engineering Chief Bora reported during their weekly meeting, all ship systems are working perfectly. The new containment systems for our exotic matter weapons are operating even better than expected. Any news about the sister ships? Jin Woo asked. The Invincible finished its final testing last week and is now fully operational. The Inevitable is still being built but should be ready within 6 months. Jin Woo was pleased with this progress. 3 ships like the Indomitable would be enough to guarantee human security for many years to come, but he hoped that the galaxy's new peaceful attitude would make using them unnecessary. What about finding crews for the new ships? We have over 1,500 volunteers, Bora replied. The psychological testing is taking time, but we should have complete crews ready when both ships are finished. It was strange that humanity's most peaceful period in space had come about through building their most destructive weapons. But Jinwoo had studied enough history to know that peace often required the threat of overwhelming force to maintain it. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the effects of the new reality were being felt in unexpected ways. The planet Xerion, once controlled by a brutal military government, had experienced a democratic revolution. The dictators had been supported by Velkari weapons and military advisors, but after Veltar, that support had vanished completely. Similar changes were happening everywhere. Without the threat of aggressive expansion by major powers, smaller species were free to develop their own governments and cultures. Trade increased as shipping became safer. Scientific cooperation grew as species no longer feared that sharing knowledge would give enemies dangerous advantages. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a human scientist working at the research station near Alpha Centauri, had noticed these changes in her daily work. 6 months ago, getting permission to study alien biology was almost impossible, she told her research team. Every species worried about revealing biological secrets that could be used to develop weapons. Now they eagerly share their knowledge. Her colleague, Dr. Lisa Chen, agreed completely. The crystalline entities just invited us to visit their homeworld and study their life processes directly. A year ago, they would not even admit their homeworld existed. But perhaps the most significant changes were taking place on Earth itself. For the first time in centuries, humanity could look toward the stars with confidence instead of fear. The colonies were safe, the trade routes were secure, and the future looked brighter than ever before. President Kim Ji-woo addressed the World Assembly in his monthly speech to the nation. "My fellow humans," he began, "we live in historic times. For the first time since we reached for the stars, we can explore space without constantly looking over our shoulders in fear." The assembly hall filled with applause, but the president raised his hand for quiet. "But we must remember that great power brings great responsibility. We have become the protectors of peace in this galaxy, not by choice but by necessity. Other species look to us not just for protection but for leadership. We must prove ourselves worthy of that trust." Behind the scenes, humanity's leaders were dealing with more complex questions that had no easy answers. How many ships like the Indomitable did they really need? What would happen if another species developed similar weapons? How could they stay ahead technologically without starting a dangerous arms race? Admiral Park Sung-ho, the commander of Human Space Command, met regularly with his advisors to discuss these concerns. "We have achieved something that seemed impossible," he told his staff. "We have created perfect deterrence through overwhelming superiority. But deterrence only works as long as it remains believable." "What do you mean, sir?" asked General Wang Li. "I mean that we must be ready to use these weapons again if absolutely necessary, but we must also make sure that such use never becomes necessary. It is a very delicate balance to maintain." The balance seemed to be working well. Intelligence reports showed that no major species was developing weapons specifically designed to counter human technology. Instead, they were focusing on peaceful development and cooperative relationships. But Admiral Park knew that this golden age of peace might not last forever. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was probably working on new weapons, new strategies, new ways to challenge human dominance. The price of peace was constant watchfulness. "Continue monitoring all military developments across the galaxy," he ordered his intelligence chief, "and keep improving our own capabilities. The moment we become overconfident is the moment we invite someone to test our strength." As more months passed, humanity's position as the galaxy's dominant power became completely accepted. Trade agreements were signed with dozens of species. Scientific partnerships flourished. Cultural exchanges brought new art, music, and literature to human worlds. The galaxy had learned to live with the knowledge that humanity possessed weapons of unimaginable destructive power. More importantly, it had learned that humans use that power responsibly, preferring cooperation and mutual benefit to conquest and domination. And in the deep space between stars, ships like the Indomitable continued their invisible patrols, silent guardians of a peace that had been won not through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that some wars were too dangerous to fight. The galaxy had expected humanity to surrender when faced with superior numbers. Instead, they had discovered that sometimes the strongest argument for peace was the credible promise of absolute destruction. It was a lesson that would be remembered for generations, a reminder that the universe's most dangerous species were often those who appeared most reasonable and peaceful. In the end, humanity had achieved what every civilization dreamed of but few ever accomplished. They had convinced their enemies that friendship was much safer than warfare. War Marshal Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. The Veltar system stretched before him like a jewel box. The Velkari homeworld spun slowly in the center, covered in gleaming cities and green oceans. Around it, 15 massive defense platforms hung in space like metal moons. Each platform was the size of a small city, and carried enough weapons to crack open planets. Beyond them, 200 Valkyrie warships patrolled in perfect formations. Every ship was a kilometer long and painted in the red and black colors of the Empire. Kethvar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. His scales had turned a bright red color, which meant he was excited about the coming battle. The humans had refused his generous offer to surrender their colonies peacefully. Now he would have the pleasure of taking them by force. "Status report," he commanded his crew. "All ships report ready for combat, War Marshal," his tactical officer replied. "The orbital platforms are fully charged and operational. Long-range sensors are scanning for approaching human vessels." The War Marshal walked to the large viewing window that covered one wall of the bridge. Through the transparent metal, he could see his fleet arranged in defensive positions. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds now waited for the humans to arrive and face their doom. "Any word from our spies in human space?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Human Command has sent their entire available fleet toward our territory. Intelligence estimates 43 ships, mostly converted cargo vessels with basic weapons." Kethvar laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. 43 ships against our 200, plus the orbital defenses. The humans must be desperate indeed to attempt such a hopeless attack. His communications officer suddenly looked up from her station. War Marshal, detecting single vessel entering the outer system. "Configuration unknown. Single vessel." Kethvar's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. "Show me." The main screen flickered and displayed a view of deep space near the edge of the system. At first, there seemed to be nothing there except stars and empty darkness. Then the computer enhanced the image and outlined a shape that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. The ship that appeared was unlike anything they had ever seen. Most vessels in space were built from bright metal that reflected light and showed proud colors. This ship seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. It was like looking at a hole cut out of space itself. "Enhance the image further," Kethvar ordered, his excitement fading into confusion. The computer made the picture clearer, but the ship remained difficult to see. It was approximately 2 kilometers long, but its exact shape was hard to determine. The hull curved and twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Sensor readings?" the War Marshal demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our instruments are having difficulty scanning the vessel. It appears to be made from materials not found in our databases. Energy readings are unusual." "Unusual how?" "The power signatures do not match any known technology, War Marshal. Whatever is driving that ship is producing energy levels our sensors cannot properly measure." Kethvar studied the strange vessel more carefully. It had no visible weapons ports, no running lights, and no identification markings. It simply drifted through space like a piece of living shadow. "Open communication channels," he ordered. "Trying, War Marshal. The vessel is not responding to our signals. Try all frequencies." "Still no response, sir. They are maintaining complete communication silence." This was unusual. Most enemies either tried to negotiate when they saw the Valkyrie fleet, or they immediately began making threats and demands. This ship didn't either. It simply moved through space without acknowledging their presence. "Deploy the fleet to intercept," Kethvar commanded. "Standard attack formation. Prepare to destroy the intruder." Across the star system, 200 warships began moving toward the single human vessel. Their engines created bright streams of light as they accelerated. The orbital defense platforms turned their massive weapons to track the approaching target. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Jinwoo watched the enemy fleet surround his ship. The tactical display showed red dots converging from all directions. In 15 minutes, they would be close enough to open fire. "Captain," Navigator He-Jin reported, "Valkyrie fleet is moving to attack positions. They have us completely surrounded." "How many ships?" Jinwoo asked calmly. 212 vessels, sir, plus 15 orbital defense platforms. Standard Valkyrie battle formation." Jinwoo nodded. The enemy was doing exactly what he had expected. They saw one ship against their entire fleet and assumed it would be an easy victory. "Tactical Officer Dong-Soo," the captain said. "What is their probable attack plan?" "Standard Valkyrie doctrine, Captain. They will form a sphere around us and concentrate fire from all ships simultaneously. 200 plasma cannons firing at once should destroy any normal target." "Any normal target," Jinwoo repeated. "Engineering Chief Bo-Ra, status of our defensive systems?" "All screens operational, Captain. Space-time distortion fields are at maximum power. We can absorb anything they throw at us." "Excellent. Communications Officer Young-Ho, Have they tried to contact us? Multiple attempts, Captain. They are demanding identification and asking us to state our intentions. And our response? Nothing, sir. Complete silence as ordered. Jinwoo smiled slightly. The Valkyrie expected their enemies to talk, to beg, to try making deals when faced with overwhelming odds. By staying silent, the Indomitable was sending a different message entirely. The enemy fleet moved closer, tightening their formation like a metal fist. War Marshal Kethvar had positioned his strongest battleships in the front, with lighter vessels providing support from behind. It was a formation designed to deliver maximum destruction in the shortest possible time. War Marshal, his tactical officer reported, "We are now within optimal firing range. The target has made no attempt to flee or defend itself." Kethvar studied the dark shape on his viewing screen. Something about the human ship bothered him, though he could not say what it was. Perhaps it was the way it moved through space without any visible engines. Or perhaps it was the complete silence from its crew. "Maybe they know they cannot escape," he said finally. "All ships prepare to fire on my command." 200 vessels turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. Plasma cannons charged with energy that could melt through the strongest armor known to science. Missile tubes loaded with warheads capable of destroying asteroids. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize an entire planet. Captain Jinwoo watched the enemy weapons prepare to fire. His crew sat calmly at their stations, showing no fear despite being outnumbered 200 to 1. They all understood what was about to happen. "Tactical," Jinwoo said quietly. "Prepare Erebus torpedoes. 6 units should be sufficient for our demonstration." "Erebus torpedoes armed and ready, Captain. Targeting lead squadron. Hold fire until they attack first." The space around them filled with tension as both fleets prepared for battle. The Valkyrie were confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. The humans were confident in technology that their enemies could not imagine. "All ships," War Marshal Kethvar announced over his fleet communication system. "Fire." Space exploded into light as 200 warships opened fire at the same instant. Plasma beams, particle streams, and explosive missiles all converged on the single human vessel. The energy release was so intense that it temporarily overloaded the Valkyrie sensor systems. When the light faded and their instruments came back online, the enemy fleet stared in shock at what they saw. The Indomitable hung in space exactly where it had been before the attack. Not only was it completely undamaged, but the massive barrage seemed to have had no effect at all. The ship looked exactly the same as it had before 200 weapons fired at it. "Impossible," Kethvar whispered. Captain Jinwoo smiled as he watched the enemy weapons fire harmlessly around his ship. The Indomitable's defensive screens had redirected all that energy into empty space using technology that bent the laws of physics. "Their turn is finished," he said calmly. "Now it is ours. Tactical, you may fire when ready." "Firing Erebus torpedoes now, Captain." 6 dark objects shot out from the human ship and raced toward the Valkyrie fleet. They moved at nearly the speed of light, weaving between enemy vessels with perfect precision. The Valkyrie tried desperately to shoot them down, but the torpedoes seemed to know where every defensive shot would be fired. When the torpedoes reached their targets, they stopped moving and hung motionless in space next to 6 Valkyrie battleships. "What are they doing?" Kethvar demanded. He found out 3 seconds later. Each torpedo created a microscopic black hole that existed for exactly 5 seconds. The gravitational force was so powerful that it pulled everything nearby into a point smaller than the head of a pin. 6 battleships, each carrying 3,000 Valkyrie warriors, simply vanished. They did not explode or break apart. They were compressed into nothing, and then released as pure energy when the artificial black holes disappeared. The surviving Valkyrie ships scattered in panic, their perfect battle formation dissolving, as captains tried to escape from whatever had just destroyed their comrades. But Captain Jinwoo was not finished with his lesson. "Target the orbital defense platforms," he ordered. "Full power, Hellfire configuration." The news traveled across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. On dozens of worlds, government leaders received emergency reports that seemed too incredible to believe. A single human ship had destroyed half of the Valkyrie First Fleet in less than 10 minutes. Most officials thought the reports were mistakes or lies. Then the video recordings arrived. Admiral Thex of the Zeph Confederacy watched the footage for the 20th time. His crystal body flickered with confused patterns of light as he tried to understand what he was seeing. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy had fired everything they had at one target. The target had emerged completely undamaged. "Computer," he said, his voice creating musical tones in the air. "Analyze the defensive capabilities shown in this recording." What technology could produce these results? The computer worked for several minutes before responding. Analysis impossible. The observed effects contradict known laws of physics. The human vessel appears to redirect energy attacks using principles not found in any scientific database. Theoretical explanations? The technology demonstrated is approximately 300 years more advanced than our current understanding. It is possible that humans have been secretly developing these capabilities for decades. Admiral Thex's crystal structure turned a worried shade of blue. The Zeph Confederacy had fought 2 wars with humanity in the past 50 years. They had won both conflicts easily, forcing the humans to give up several mining colonies. Now he wondered what would have happened if the humans had used their real weapons. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On the gas cloud world of Mortai, Elder Vash swirled with agitated colors as he studied the battle recordings. "This changes everything," he announced to the collective council. "If humans possess more ships like this one, they could destroy any fleet in the galaxy. Every species would be defenseless against them." "But they made no territorial demands," pointed out Elder Kess. "They defended their colonies and left immediately. Perhaps they are not interested in conquest. Or perhaps they are simply being patient," Vash replied. "A species with such weapons could afford to wait for the perfect moment to strike." On the reptilian world of Krell, General Rack studied the tactical data with cold military logic. His government had been planning to invade human space within the year, confident that their superior numbers would guarantee victory. Those invasion plans were now being quietly canceled. "How many ships like this do the humans have?" he asked his intelligence chief. "Unknown, General. Our spies report no other vessels with similar capabilities." This may have been their only prototype. And if it was not? The intelligence chief's scales shifted to a frightened yellow color. "Then we should consider converting our invasion fleet to cargo haulers and offer to carry human trade goods." But the biggest shock was felt on the Velkari homeworld itself. War Marshal Kethvar had returned to face Emperor Veltak's anger, but found instead a ruler consumed by fear. Emperor Veltak was very old, even by Velkari standards. His scales had turned the deep black color of extreme age, and he moved slowly and carefully. But his mind was still sharp, and he understood exactly what the human demonstration meant for his empire. "You let them escape," the Emperor said, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "After they destroyed half our fleet, you simply watched them fly away." "What choice did I have?" Kethvar replied. "They could have destroyed every ship in the system. Instead, they showed mercy and left." "Mercy?" The Emperor's scales rippled with rage. "They humiliated us in front of the entire galaxy. Every species we have conquered will see this as weakness. There will be rebellions on a dozen worlds. Better rebellions than complete extinction, my Emperor. You did not see what their weapons could do. They turned our most powerful battleships into nothing. Not destroyed them, not damaged them. They made them disappear entirely." The Emperor moved to his palace window that overlooked the space where his orbital defenses had once protected the homeworld. Now there was only empty vacuum and slowly spreading clouds of atomic dust. "How is such a thing possible?" he asked. "Our intelligence report said that human technology was centuries behind ours. Their ships were weak and primitive." "Their normal ships probably are weak," Kethvar admitted. "But this vessel was something completely different. It used weapons I have never seen before, defenses that made our attacks useless. It was like they had learned to rewrite the basic laws of nature." The Emperor was quiet for a long time, thinking about what this meant for his empire. Finally, he spoke again. "Send orders to all Velkari commanders immediately. The expansion into human space is cancelled forever. All territorial claims against human colonies are withdrawn. Any ship that encounters human vessels is to avoid contact unless specifically ordered otherwise. My Emperor, this will be seen as complete surrender." "It is complete surrender," Veltak replied. "Total and absolute. The humans have shown us that they could wipe out our entire civilization with a single ship. We will not give them any reason to send more." The order went out across the Velkari Empire within hours. Similar messages were soon being transmitted by other aggressive species throughout the galaxy. The hegemony of Xar canceled their planned attacks on human shipping routes. The Ravager clans, famous for raiding isolated colonies, declared human space completely off-limits to all their warriors. But perhaps the most important reaction came from the Galactic Council itself. An emergency meeting was called, with representatives from every member species attending either in person or through long-distance communication. Ambassador Taman entered the great chamber to find a very different atmosphere than he had experienced just days before. Where once there had been condescension and barely hidden threats, now there was nervous respect and obvious fear. Ambassador, Speaker Vexthul began. His clicking sounds translated into worried words. The Council has reviewed the recent events in Velkari space. We had no idea that humanity possessed such advanced military technology. Taman took his place at the speaking platform, his face calm and professional. These capabilities exist primarily as a deterrent to aggression. We still prefer diplomatic solutions to military ones. But you built weapons of incredible power, sang the Zeph representative in harmonious but frightened tones. Why would a peaceful species create the means for such destruction? Because peace only works when all parties choose it willingly, Taman replied. The Indomitable exists to make sure that choice remains available to humanity. The Mortai Elder's gaseous form swirled with confused patterns. How many such vessels do you have? Taman smiled slightly. That information remains classified. I can tell you that the Indomitable is not the only ship of her type, though we hope that yesterday's demonstration will make deploying the others unnecessary. A wave of fear seemed to pass through the assembled representatives. The idea that humanity had built multiple vessels with such destructive power was terrifying to consider. What are your intentions toward the rest of the galaxy? Asked the Krell delegate, his scales showing submissive colors. Our intentions remain exactly the same as they have always been, Taman answered. We wish to trade peacefully, explore safely, and defend ourselves when threatened. Recent events change nothing about human policy toward other species. But everyone in the chamber knew that recent events had changed everything. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely. Humanity had revealed weapons that made them effectively invincible against any known military force. The Galactic Council formally recognizes the complete sovereignty of all human colonies and trade routes, Speaker Vexthul announced. Any species that threatens human interests will face severe economic sanctions and possible military action by Council forces. It was an empty threat, of course. Everyone present knew that their combined fleets could not match what a single human ship had accomplished. But it was also recognition of the new reality. Humanity had become the galaxy's dominant power through one simple demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. As the meeting ended and representatives left the chamber, many were already planning to send trade delegations to human space. Defense treaties would be offered. Scientific partnerships would be proposed. Cultural exchanges would be arranged. The galaxy had learned not to judge species by their apparent weaknesses. Humanity had seemed young and primitive, but they had secretly developed weapons that made ancient civilizations look like children playing with toys. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Indomitable continued its journey home, carrying with it the knowledge that the best way to keep peace was sometimes to be very, very good at war. Captain Jin Woo sat in his command chair and stared at the message on his screen. The words were simple, but they meant everything was about to change. Priority Alpha transmission from Galactic Council. Velkari Empire has issued ultimatum for 3 human colonies. Diplomatic solution failed. Indomitable authorized for immediate deployment. The bridge around him was dark and quiet. No bright lights or colorful displays like on regular military ships. Everything was black metal and shadows. The crew of 50 people who worked on this ship had all volunteered to disappear from the universe. As far as anyone knew, they had died in training accidents years ago. Jin Woo was a man in his 50s with graying hair and calm eyes. He had been commanding this ship for 15 years, though officially he had been dead for just as long. The Indomitable existed in no public records. It appeared on no fleet lists. Even most human military leaders did not know it was real. Navigator Hee-Jin, Jin Woo called to a young woman sitting at the front of the bridge. She was maybe 30 years old with short black hair and very steady hands. Plot a course for the Veltar system. Use maximum speed. Hyjin's fingers moved over her control panel. The ship around them seemed to hum as hidden engines came to life. The Indomitable did not use normal hyperspace lanes like other vessels. It could fold space itself, bending the universe to move faster than anything else in the galaxy. "Course plotted, Captain," she reported. "We will arrive in 36 hours. Engineering Chief Bora," Jinwoo said next. A woman in her 40s looked up from a display covered with numbers and diagrams. She had helped design many of the ship's systems and understood them better than anyone else alive. "Begin reactor sequence 7. Bring all weapons to standby." Bora's face grew serious. Reactor sequence 7 was only used when the ship was preparing for battle. "Captain, are you sure? Sequence 7 means we are going to full combat readiness." "Yes," Jinwoo replied. "We are going to show the Velkari something they have never seen before." The ship's reactor was unlike anything used by other species. Deep in the engineering section, 3 artificial black holes spun inside magnetic containment fields. The energy they produced could power entire planets, but here it was used for weapons that could destroy fleets. Tactical Officer Dong-Soo, the captain continued. A young man in his 20s turned from his weapons console. Despite his youth, he had trained on systems that no other human had ever touched. "Run complete diagnostics on all weapon systems." "I want everything perfect." "Yes, sir," Dong-Soo replied. "Running diagnostics on Erebus torpedoes now. All 6 units show green status. Hellfire arrays are charging to standby levels. Defensive screens are operating at maximum efficiency." The names of the weapons meant nothing to most people. But to the crew of the Indomitable, they represented the most advanced military technology humanity had ever created. The Erebus torpedoes could create tiny black holes that lasted just long enough to destroy enemy ships. The Hellfire arrays fired streams of exotic matter that could take apart anything they touched. "Communications Officer Young-ho," Jinwoo said to a thin man with nervous hands. "Send acknowledgement to Human Space Command. Tell them we received their message and are proceeding to target." "Message sent, Captain," Young-ho replied. "Should I prepare diplomatic communication channels?" "No. When we reach Veltar, there will be no talking." The bridge fell quiet as everyone processed what their captain had just said. They all knew what their ship could do, but they had never used its full power against real enemies. Until now, the Indomitable had been a threat that existed only in theory. Jinwoo stood up and walked to the large viewing screen at the front of the bridge. It showed the stars streaming past as the ship traveled faster than light. Somewhere ahead of them, the Velkari Empire was preparing to attack human colonies. The Velkari did not know that 15 million colonists were protected by more than just treaties and hope. They did not know that humanity had built weapons specifically designed to end wars before they could begin. They were about to learn. "Captain," Navigator Hyjin said quietly, "may I ask a question?" "Go ahead." "The Velkari have 200 ships and strong orbital defenses. Do you think they will surrender when they see us?" Jinwoo considered this carefully. He had studied Velkari military tactics for years. They were aggressive and confident, used to winning through superior numbers and firepower. "No, they will attack immediately. They will see one ship against their entire fleet and assume we are either crazy or desperate. And when they realize what we can do, by then it will be too late for them to surrender." The hours passed slowly as the Indomitable raced through folded space toward its destination. The crew ran through combat procedures they had practiced thousands of times but never used in real battle. Everyone knew exactly what they had to do when the fighting started. Engineering Chief Bora checked and rechecked the reactor containment fields. The artificial black holes that powered their weapons were incredibly dangerous. If the magnetic fields failed, the ship and everyone on it would be crushed into a point smaller than an atom. Tactical Officer Dong-Soo calibrated the weapon targeting systems. The Erebus torpedoes had to be aimed with perfect precision. Each one could destroy multiple enemy ships, but only if they were fired at exactly the right moment. Navigator Hyjin monitored their course through folded space. One small error in navigation could send them billions of miles off target or worse, trap them forever in a spatial fold. Communications Officer Young-ho listened to long-range transmissions from the Veltar system. The Velkari fleet was moving into attack positions, expecting to face a desperate human force that would try to negotiate or run away. They had no idea what was really coming for them. Captain Jinwoo spent the time reviewing everything. He knew about Velkari tactics and defenses. Their fleet was arranged in the standard pattern, with heavy battleships in front and support vessels behind. Their orbital platforms protected the homeworld with massive plasma cannons. Against any normal enemy, these defenses would be nearly impossible to defeat. The Velkari had conquered dozens of species using the same basic strategy of overwhelming force. But the Indomitable was not a normal enemy. "Captain," Young-Ho announced, "we are receiving long-range communications from the Veltar system. The Velkari fleet is mobilizing for battle. They appear to be expecting an attack." "They are correct," Jinwoo replied, "but not the kind of attack they are preparing for." Entering outer system perimeter in 12 hours, Heejin reported, "All systems are operating normally." Jinwoo returned to his command chair and activated the ship's internal communication system. His voice would now reach every person on board. "All hands, this is the captain. We are approaching enemy territory. In 12 hours, we will face the largest fleet in Velkari space. Our mission is to demonstrate that humanity is not defenseless. We will use only the force necessary to achieve this goal." He paused, thinking about the colonies full of families that the Velkari wanted to destroy or enslave. The enemy believes that might makes right. They think that because they have more ships, they can take whatever they want from weaker species. Today we will show them that strength is not always about numbers. The captain looked around at his crew, these 50 people who had given up their lives to protect humanity's future. "Remember, we are not just defending 3 worlds. We are defending the idea that small nations have the right to exist without fear of conquest. We are proving that bullies can be stopped, no matter how big they think they are." The ship continued its journey through folded space, carrying with it weapons that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Soon the Velkari Empire would learn what happened when they chose the wrong enemy to threaten. In the deep darkness between stars, humanity's final argument was coming home to make its point. Ambassador Taemin walked slowly across the smooth metal floor of the Galactic Council chamber. The huge room was built like a bowl, with thousands of seats rising up the curved walls. Each seat held a different alien being, and their eyes followed the human as he made his way to the center. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the chamber. Taemin could hear the soft sounds of breathing, clicking and humming from the various species around him. Some looked like giant insects with multiple arms and glowing eyes. Others were made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. A few appeared to be clouds of colored gas floating above their seats. Behind Taemin walked Captain Sora. She wore a dark blue military uniform with silver buttons that caught the light. Her black boots made quiet clicking sounds on the metal floor. Her face showed no emotion, but her dark eyes moved constantly, watching everything around them. At the front of the chamber sat the council speaker, a creature called Vexthul. He was enormous, like a praying mantis that had grown to the size of a small building. His green eyes glowed in the darkness, and 4 arms moved constantly as he sorted through data tablets. When he spoke, a machine changed his clicking sounds into words that humans could understand. "Human ambassador," Vexthul began, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand before the greatest powers in this galaxy. We have gathered here today to deliver an important message from the Velkari Empire." Taemin stopped walking and stood perfectly still. His gray hair was neat and his black suit was perfectly pressed. He had been a diplomat for 30 years and had learned never to show fear, even when facing creatures that could kill him with a single movement. A new figure stepped forward from the shadows. This was Kethvar, the war leader of the Velkari Empire. He looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. His scales were dark green and black, and deep scars covered his face and arms. Each scar told the story of a battle he had won. "Humans," Kethvar said, his voice deep and rough like grinding stones. "Your species has been traveling in space for less than 200 years. We Velkari have ruled among the stars for over 3,000 years. You are children playing with toys you do not understand." Murmurs filled the great chamber. Representatives from dozens of species whispered to each other in their own languages. Many had faced similar speeches from the Velkari before. Most had surrendered without a fight. Kethvar continued, his scales shifting to a darker color as he spoke. "The Velkari Empire requires 3 of your colony worlds. New Seoul, Busan Station, and Jeju Colony must be evacuated within 1 galactic standard week. Remove your people and leave these worlds to us." Taemin listened without changing his expression. The 3 worlds Kethvar had named were home to 15 million humans. Families had lived there for 3 generations, Children had been born there who had never seen Earth. These were not just colonies, they were home to millions of people. May I ask why you want these particular worlds? Taman said, his voice calm and clear. They sit on hyperspace routes that we need for our trade ships, Kethvar replied. The location is valuable to us. Your people can find other places to live. And if we refuse your request? Kethvar smiled, showing rows of sharp white teeth. Then we will take the worlds by force. Your small fleet cannot stand against our power. We have studied your ships, human. They are weak and primitive. Around the chamber, other alien representatives leaned forward in their seats. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Would the humans beg? Would they try to bargain? Would they simply surrender like so many other species had done? Captain Sora shifted slightly behind Taman, but the ambassador held up his hand in a small gesture that told her to wait. He had dealt with bullies before, both human and alien. The key was not to react with anger or fear. You seem very confident about the strength of your fleet, Taman observed. 200 ships, I believe. 212 to be exact, Kethvar said proudly. Each one capable of destroying your largest cities. Against our armada, your 43 vessels would last perhaps 1 hour. You know a great deal about our regular fleet, Taman said. Your intelligence network is impressive. We know everything about your military capabilities, human. We have spies in your shipyards, informants in your command centers, and sensors watching your patrol routes. You have no secrets from us. Taman nodded slowly as if he was thinking about this information. Around the chamber, alien representatives watched with interest. The human seemed very calm for someone who had just been told his entire species was helpless. I notice you said regular fleet, said Vexthul, the council speaker. This suggests you have other vessels? All spacefaring species have other vessels, Taman replied. Cargo ships, research vessels, private craft. I assume the Velkari do as well. Do not play word games with us, human, Kethvar snarled. Do you accept our terms or not? Taman was quiet for a long moment. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the floating gas beings stopped their constant swirling motions. Finally, the human ambassador spoke. The worlds you have named contain 15 million human beings, men, women, and children who have built lives, homes, and communities. You ask us to abandon them as if they were objects to be moved around at your convenience. They are objects to be moved around at our convenience, Kethvar replied. The strong do what they will. The weak suffer what they must. This is the way of the galaxy. Perhaps, Taman said. But before we make our final decision, I would like to tell you a story from human history. Kethvar's scales rippled with annoyance. We did not come here for stories. Indulge me, Taman said. Long ago on Earth there was a great empire called Rome. They had the largest army in their part of the world. They conquered many smaller nations through superior force. One day they demanded that a small city-state surrender without a fight. And did they? Asked Vexthul despite himself. The leaders of the small city gathered to discuss Rome's ultimatum. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight even though they knew they would lose. Finally, one old man stood up and said something that changed history. Captain Sora touched a small device on her wrist. A tiny green light blinked once and then went dark. The message had been sent. What did he say? Kethvar demanded, growing impatient. He said that there are times when dying free is better than living as a slave. The small city chose to fight. They lost the battle, but their example inspired others. Eventually, the great Roman Empire fell, not to a larger army, but to the idea that some things are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible. The chamber was completely quiet now. Every alien present was trying to understand what the human was really saying. Are you threatening us? Kethvar asked. I am telling you that humanity values freedom more than safety, Taman replied. We prefer to solve problems through discussion and compromise. But we will not abandon our people no matter what threats we face. Then you refuse our generous offer? Taman smiled, but there was no warmth in his expression. We request 48 hours to prepare our response. Granted, Vexthul announced. But this delay changes nothing. The Velkari Empire's demands remain the same. As the session ended, aliens began leaving the Great Chamber. Many stopped to stare at the two humans who had just defied the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Some looked curious. Others seemed frightened by what might happen next. Captain Sora waited until they were alone before speaking quietly to Taman. The transmission reached them 6 hours ago. The Indomitable should be moving toward Velkari space by now. Taman nodded. Good. Now we wait and see if they understand what they have brought upon themselves. Do you think they will attack immediately? The Velkari have never met an enemy they could not defeat through simple force, Taman replied. They will see our ship as just another target to destroy. They will not ask questions until it is too late, and then? The ambassador looked up at the empty seats where moments before, the galaxy's most powerful species had sat in judgment of humanity. Then they will learn why some species choose diplomacy not from weakness but from mercy. Far across the galaxy, something dark and terrible was moving through the empty space between stars. It carried with it the final argument of human civilization, an argument that had never been used before but had always been ready. Soon the Velkari Empire would discover that there were worse things in the universe than losing a battle. They were about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that preferred talking, but was very, very good at fighting.